As mentioned, my name is Mary McLennan. I lead
I'm
behavioral
sorry,
science
Mary.
efforts in the Secretary General's office in the United Nations. I also lead an
Mary?
initiative called the UN Behavioral Science Group, which brings together many colleagues across the UN system to apply behavioral science. So it's a pleasure to be with you all today and to share this panel with some great UN colleagues. Very much looking forward to hearing their presentations about behavioral science in the peace and peace context. What I'm going to speak to, though, is much more big picture, high level about behavioral science across the UN as a whole. So, what I'll speak to is, first of all, the UN Behavioral Science Group. So, what we do in this group is we bring together over 1,000 UN colleagues from more than 60 entities in 110 countries. And this group is really diverse. Not only that do we range across geographies, but also with respect to the areas in which we work, from health, climate, gender, and right through to peace and security. But that being said, most members of this group are at the early stages of their behavioral science journey. So they're really thinking through how to apply behavioral science, going from one project to two projects, or really how to think about it overall in their work. So we support them by bringing them together, as well as providing some thought leadership. So I'll cover some of the documents that we work on and we produce from the group, and then also some ways in which we support through actual projects themselves. So as mentioned, the Secretary General is very much a proponent of the application of behavioral science. We're very fortunate to have his supports. If you've been following behavioral science in the UN over the last number of years, there's a good chance you've probably heard about something from him in this space. So last year, he came out to say that behavioral science is a critical tool for the UN to progress on its mandate, and also strongly encourages entities across the UN system to invest in behavioral science, as well as to work together in a collaborative way, which is essentially what we are doing in the UN Behavioral Science Group. Secretary General has also gone a little bit further than a statement to really highlight the importance of behavioral science and what's called our common agenda, which is a plan for the next 5 or so years in the UN, and mentions behavioral science, the key component of that plan, which is really in the vision of the Secretary General going forward. So if you want to know more about Secretary General's vision for behavioral science in the UN, there's actually a guidance note that was produced from the Secretary General's office just last year. So there's more in there. I can share that with the organizers of the conference afterwards if you're interested to know more. It talks about the ways of applying behavioral science to policy and programming. So both the way for instance, the way we can make policies and programs more effective, but also within administrative and management areas. So this is with respect to thinking about both the internal operations of the UN, as well as the way that the UN interfaces with beneficiaries outside. So those are the two core ways in which we're reflecting on applying behavioral science overall. If you're interested in behavioral science, again, I'm going to promote one more thing here, in that we also have released the UN Behavioral Science Report, which brings together the experiences of 25 UN entities. So you don't have to hear it from me, you can hear it directly from them, what entities are doing, both with respect to the efforts in their organizations, as well as some case study examples. So fortunate we have one submission from DPPA, which we'll hear from on the panel today, but there's much more in there if you're curious to see what different entities are doing. And that document also goes through some enablers for behavioral science in the UN. So if you're curious to know how we're thinking about going from one project to two projects to more projects, there's a little bit of our strategy in there if you're curious to learn more. And then, as mentioned, we also have some ways in which we support projects. So we just started this a number of months ago, but it's a fellowship program where we're bringing in academics and various behavioral scientists into the UN system to actually work on behavioral science projects. If you're interested in this, there'll be more opportunities in the future, and I'll come to a few points at the end and ways you can engage with us if you'd like to perhaps explore this opportunity. But right now we just have it's only a few people, and we're working on issues such as mis and disinformation, which might be of interest to those attending the session today, as well as nutrition and various other areas of the UN. And we're working with entities such as the World Food Program, the Food and Agricultural Organization, the ILO, and others. Now, with respect to some of the areas of work regarding behavioral science application in the UN, so we carried out a survey of these 25 entities which have relative experience in behavioral science. And we identified 5 areas that have been said to have the most potential for further opportunities in behavioral science application. And those 5 areas are health, gender, climate, as well as peace and security. So very much the topic of today's discussion, really an important area of work, not only in the entities presenting today, but also across the UN as a whole. And then also some other issues have arisen with respect to administrative burden in the UN. So really that internal operations, as well as how the UN intersects with beneficiaries as well. So to say that peace and security is a really important area for the UN's work regarding behavioral science. Now I'll just speak to a couple examples here and then turn it over to the colleagues who are actually working on projects in this space. But a few I wanted to highlight who are not represented on this panel today. So the first is from UNDP, and I can share some of the resources to these in a follow-up with the organizers. But they produced 2 documents about applying behavioral science to prevent violent extremism. So what they've done is really created documents geared towards practitioners. So perhaps those of you who are a bit more technical and looking for resources to really make your knowledge resonate with those who maybe don't have as much academic background, let's say, these documents might be a place for you to explore. They cover a step-by-step guidance and sort of how to thinking about applying behavioral science to address violent extremism. And they also highlight a few experiments. So they have done some work in Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan regarding some programming and how to make it more effective regarding using the application of behavioral science. So I'll share those resources with you later. And then as well, I also wanted to highlight that UNOCT, which is the UN Office of Counterterrorism, has a hub on behavioral insights. And they have a number of things in the works right now. So keep perhaps an organization to keep on your radar. This includes tools to access resources. So what they found is that there wasn't really an easy way for practitioners to get an understanding of what works. So they're trying to help practitioners do that through creating a tool, which will hopefully be released shortly. They're also putting together a Behavioral Insights Academy. So this will provide some training in the area of counterterrorism for those who are interested. And again, this is in the works, so I can't share with you any kind of concrete things beyond that at this time, but there is some thinking in that space. And then lastly, they're also working on a few research projects. So with that, I'm going to just go to a few points regarding how you can maybe engage with us if you're interested in working and being involved in the UN Behavioral Science Group. It doesn't have to be with respect to peace and security. It can be through with any area of the work of the UN. So first, I'd encourage you to read the documents I highlighted. They really give a lot more context. So if you want to know more, you can dive into them. There's the Secretary General's guidance note. There's also the UN Behavioral Science report. And we also recently released a guide on behavioral science geared towards colleagues in the UN. And then secondly, probably most importantly, I would encourage you to join the UN Behavioral Science Group. And I wish I could share the link with you all, but I'm the only one virtual, I think. What this entails is you can join the 1,000 colleagues in the UN who are applying behavioral science or interested in behavioral science. And we also welcome people outside the UN as observers. So we have colleagues from governments, academia, international organizations, civil society, NGOs, the private sector. So really we're trying to build partnerships and connections, not just within the UN, but also outside. So if you join the group, you can keep up to date on what we're doing and be involved in our events. And then very last here, if you want to be involved, you can follow us on Twitter or UN_BSci or UN_innovation if you would like to know more about innovation more broadly. So with that, thank you very much for your attention and time, and happy to answer any questions you might have about behavioral science in the UN.